Hey guys, what's up? So good evening. This video is brought to you by Linode. If you guys are looking to get into cloud hosting, what that means is you make a website and you put it on the internet. You could either serve it from your house, like a server inside your home, or you can use Linode. That's what I've used for the last 8 years now. They run like my website CodeHawk, which isn't much here, but what I'm doing though is I'm building a new framework, and all of my stuff is I just use Linode because it's Linux. They give me full control over the server. They have prices as low as $5 a month. I only pay like $20 for mine, and then like a $5 backup plan. And then in addition to that, if you guys are interested in doing this yourself, check out the link in the description tab below because it gives you $20 off. So in this video, I just want to go ahead and talk about a few trial and errors, and really the reason of this video is to talk about NextJS, which is a web framework for React. It's a server-side rendering library for React, and a lot of people probably don't understand why that is, or the complexities behind why we need this tool really. So I just kind of want to go over some of that stuff in this video. So React, for all of you guys who don't know, which is probably not very many who have been in the programming field, React was created by Facebook back in like 2013, and it's now the most popular client-side library. So you can do all kinds of different things. Like here you can see the interactive counter. And this is all being executed on your browser. So when I requested this page, it goes to a server that Facebook owns, and then the server says, hey, let's send back some information. A lot of the information that gets sent back is JavaScript, so the browser has to then execute that JavaScript, and that's how you have this interactivity. And there's no communication going on with the server, at least as far as I know. However, if there was, you can hide all that stuff through what is called an Ajax call, which is an asynchronous call from your browser to the server, and there's no page refresh. So when you did web development back like 10 years ago, Ajax was still somewhat of a new concept. A lot of websites, and even now you'll find some websites where every time you click a button or do a drop down, the page like flickers and reloads. And each time a page has to reload, obviously that's like that's a data that's being taken up on your mobile device. It's client-side code that has to be executed by the browser. And it's also the server that has to be listening for those requests to serve the right data. So with all of that stuff going on, people found, okay, with Ajax, we can make these asynchronous calls, and the user experience is much more nice. It's fluid. You could get this dynamic content, and no communication with the server needs to take place until you want it to. But the problem with that is that when you're building a website, and say it's, CodeHawk, and let's pretend this is a blog, right, where I'm writing blogs and things like that. And right now this is just a static HTML page, so there's nothing going on really on this website here. But if it was a bunch of blogs and you want people to go to your blog, or maybe it's a product page where you have affiliate deals and you want as many eyes on that as possible for the potential to make money, then the client-side rendering can become a problem for search engines. Like, so Google and Bing, they say that they can execute JavaScript, and they can, but there's all these different rules and regulations in place, and recommendations from Google, and in order to like make sure that your content is able to be perused by these search engines, and that your content can be discovered, because search engines, they evaluate your content, and then they figure out, based on the content you have, how to rank you when somebody searches for something like keywords or tags that are in line with what your website is about. So all of that stuff is called search engine optimization, and there's actually entire websites geared towards like, how do we keep up with the Google algorithm, like annoying sites like this with pop-ups. You have they just talk about these SEO things and all these different guides and things that people have discovered to get more looks on their page and everything. What an annoying pop-up. But the thing is though, is like, we now have all this technology that's like, it's like all these people are like, oh, all these problems with client-side frameworks. Let's build static site generators. So you have things like Gatsby that are coming along. I can't believe their homepage is doing, okay, there it goes. It seems like the web's having a problem tonight. But anyway, Gatsby is like, everybody, like static sites are all the rage. So it's like, everybody's like, okay, with all the search engine problems and all the client-side rendering, if you don't need all that stuff, maybe you should just use a static site generator. The problem with a static site generator is that it's for static content. So it's not built for dynamic content that's making a ton of Ajax calls and updating the page and having a bunch of dynamic operability. So it doesn't matter if you use React, Vue, Angular, all that stuff is geared towards client-side libraries that is actually run on the browser. So the page has to use JavaScript and the library in order to render the content, and then the search engine has to be able to evaluate it. So that stuff takes time, and in a lot of cases, people use this technology even when they don't need to. But the big problem is that the search engines in many cases don't know how to read it, and it does slow things down a little bit. So the Next.js library is the solution for being able to get server-side rendered React code that is generated on the server and passed down so that the search engine doesn't have to wait for any sort of JavaScript to execute or anything like that. And you automatically have the data that you need on the initial page load. So the idea behind this is that it speeds up development, and it also speeds up your site, and also it speeds up the ability for search engines to index your content and then be able to rank it appropriately. So you can see all the different websites that are now using Next.js, and the reason why is because Next.js, it works seamlessly with React. So really any React project that you're trying to build out there, I would probably recommend that you just use Next.js. Now, behind the scenes, what all this stuff is doing is it's actually using Nodejs. So Nodejs is a runtime, and a lot of people think it's JavaScript. It's not. It's a runtime, but you use JavaScript in order to write it. So the benefit of that is that Node is non-blocking, and it means that like for every request that's made to your server, you're never going to have the server like just hanging up and not being able to respond to a request. There's going to be hang-ups on database calls and file reads and things like that, but it can ultimately take as many requests as you throw at it. So it's very asynchronous to the core. It's non-blocking, and that ultimately gives you very good performance. Now, one of the sites that I quickly threw together because I was trying to create like an alternative to React and Angular, and it's not until you go to actually build these projects that you realize like what an endeavor something like that truly is. But this website here is actually using something called lit HTML and a couple of other things. But like if you look at the page source here, you have some of the initial content, but then all the counters and all that stuff is not being actually rendered on the page. So a search engine is not going to necessarily, depending on what it is, it may not wait for this content to load. It may not even evaluate it. You don't know. This stuff is actually static up here, but this stuff down here is not. So all this dynamic stuff is executed on the browser. And with Next.js, you have the ability to have your server side generate all the initial code that you want to pass down using React. So you can use the tried and true React. It's all JavaScript, and it's Node, which is basically JavaScript. And it's just basically the best way to write React apps. So I think there should be no reason why anybody that's using React for any sort of development shouldn't be using something like Next.js or maybe a competitor to Next.js, although this is the most popular server-side rendering tool for React. So I find it funny, the conversation of today is basically like you have a whole entire generation of developers that don't really know anything about spinning up an Apache server or using PHP maybe, and just literally rendering static HTML content. And now it's like there's this revolutionary thing where people have this light bulb in their head like, oh, I don't need React for all this basic level stuff. It can be a static web page and I can just send it down. The problem with that, and if I'm going to pull up this code base, and this is really ugly. It's a very big, huge work in progress right now. I got just comments and to-dos all over the place. But what I want to show you is that when you're dealing with static content, here is an example of something that I just quickly started doing and then realizing like, I don't really want to do this and I'm going to go ahead and just not do it this way. But I started looking into if I was going to display a page, like here's an index page for a website, and here you have static content that comes down from the server. So it will be very fast. But the problem with this static content, right, is that it doesn't really change. So are you going to have a different HTML page for every single home page you have? Are you going to have a different page for every blog? You could do that, and you could just have like literally thousands of HTML pages. And that's kind of what static site generators are doing in a lot of sense. But I find that to be unwieldy and unnecessary. And for that reason, that's why many years ago we decided to have template engines. So web frameworks from Ruby on Rails, Django, ASP.NET, they all have their own template engines. And the reason why we have template engines is because we don't want to have to repeat this markup over and over again. We want to just be able to put placeholders and inject the data into these same templates and use them over and over. So when I was building this real quick, I was like, okay, well, how can I just quickly, real dirty, do a like a static site, basically a static site, and just inject some key value pairs into a template. So I was like, okay, clearly I need some sort of header, and I need a footer, and here's I'm just simply reading files using Node, and then I have these, I'm iterating over lists of values, and the lists or arrays have objects in them, and the objects just simply have a key and a value. So I then go and do a simple replace, looking for the key, and then replacing the key with the value. And that works all great and fine for basic level stuff, but then you soon get into the fact that your template engine needs to account for things like Booleans, like true, false in the template. If this true, display this. If not, that. That's a lot of code to write from scratch. That's just a basic example. Iterating over a list of arrays, and then those lists of arrays that could have objects in them and all this stuff. And you start getting into some of that stuff. And even though I could build it, I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. That's why we have React. React is the best template engine out there. And I'm just going to do that. So instead of me having to build my own template engine, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and use Next.js. So what I do instead, and this is, like I said, a huge work in progress, you have this index here, and this index, and although it's a huge work in progress, I don't want anybody to judge any of this stuff, because this is me switching on a dime and just messing around with different things. But what I do is I pass in the blogs, and the blogs is really an array, and because my template doesn't really adhere to any sort of structure where every element of the array can have the same content containers, then I have to be very explicit about, okay, first element of the array, I want you to be, behave this way. Second element, a different way with different containers and things like that. So that's part of that's just something that's short-sightedness as far as just developing and working on the fly and all that stuff. But the point I'm trying to make, look at this. I didn't mean to share that. But anyway, these things, these things are just, when you start building projects, you can have huge endeavors in your mind, and you can start building things, and then you're going to be like, oh, this is going to be too much work. There's a tool for that that's already been done. Let's go ahead and use that. So this gives me the freedom of being able to use React for my actual static content. And long story short, the reason why is because I want to do it for SEO purposes. Next.js, the reason why you guys should use it is because you don't have to use Next.js to actually create your project. You can use Next.js with Fastify. So Fastify is a Node.js framework that I'm really fond of right now. And it has all the abilities for logging, debugging. I can handle the routes myself, because if you use Next.js to spin up a project, it's really just Node.js, and it's like Express basically, but it's going to handle all your routing. And I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to be able to define my own routes. Here's a route that I commented out, and then I replaced it with my Fastify Next.js project that is actually just rendering this index page. So here's this index page, and that's coming from the pages index right here. So it's going to display this. Right now there's no data. So if I were to go ahead and fire this thing up just to show you guys what is going on here. All right, so because this is such a huge work in progress, it's really a mess, but the bottom line is that this header is actually a React component. And then you can see the title here up in the top left is test. So if I were to look at where that's coming from, you can see I have a nav, and that nav, and then the header, and the title is test. And that's coming from separate components. So this gives you the ability to write your server-side code in React. That's what Next.js does. And it works very well. And like I said, the best part about it, in my opinion, is that it does not get in your way when it comes to, okay, I want to use Fastify, or I want to use Express, or I want to use something else. You could just use Next.js as your server-side stack, which is really using Node under the covers. which is the same thing as Fastify or Express or any of these other Node.js frameworks. Here are these double quotes. I get that from kind of Django. So in my template engine, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for just simple, regex, replace, which is regular expressions, replace those template tags with the values. And that was working fine. Like for instance, let me just show you the site real quick. So the purpose behind this is just simply I wanted to build a my own blog framework that literally is doing everything from the ground up. I don't want to rely on any sort of other blogging type framework that is out there. I don't even want to use Django. I'm literally trying to build all this stuff from the ground up and initially have it so that people can use it, or myself mostly, without even hooking it up to a database. And one of the reasons why I don't want to use a database right now is simply because it's too much of a work in progress. So my database being a flat file system of pipe delimited values, it saves me a lot of time during the development process. But anyway, let's go ahead and these are just different things that I've been using. You can see some of these names I do for testing. That's some of the weird things. So anyway, you have, okay, so then, all right, yeah, anyway, all right. So, and then here's my, here's some of my processing right here. So I'm like, how do I use this without a database? Well, clearly I need an image-based system. So if I were going to use some sort of image, I'm going to look for, let's just say it's a cow. So we'll grab this cow here. I'm going to copy the image address from that. I'm going to paste that in here. I'm going to upload the image because what it does is it posts to the server and then it returns back a GUID with that file name. And if I were to look at what's going on there, it's all the way down here where it's like process image. So this process image, it's trimming any sort of white space that you might send with the URL. It's looking for whether it's HTTPS or HTTP, so it can request the right prototype or protocol. And then it's using this UUID library to spin up the unique GUID so that I can change the name. I'm also keeping the path in place, which is what this is. So if you upload a PNG or an SVG or a JPEG or something, it's going to keep the right file type. And then I'm writing it. I'm writing the file, and then I'm sending back the unique name, which got generated to the blog writer. So that's what was going on there. So that's how this GUID got passed back. And then I go ahead and submit it. Right now, like my redirect's not even working on this. I don't even have a redirect in place, but let me go ahead and show you the home page. I also have my debugger is hitting right here. So this is where it creates the blog. I'm just simply writing a pipeline delimited file for right now. Like I said, again, I'll probably end up using some sort of database system in the future, but right now it's just pipeline delimited. And now that I remember correctly, it's actually, it is redirecting. I forgot that it does that. So anyway, here's the blog. And this is just some fake title I got from CNN for right now. But you have my name as the blog poster, the date, all that stuff is being written on Node, the server side. Image is passed back. There's probably should be some resizing going on there. And then you have the actual content that you wrote. So if I were to go back and just change some of this stuff, I can do a bunch of different titles. We're just going to do that for right now. The file name is how you actually find the file, so it should be unique. And I wanted to give the flexibility because the file name goes in the URL, and you can get actual extra SEO juice for that. So if I were going to do this one as cow, I can use the same image if I want and just submit. Keep all this stuff in place. I got to stop hitting this breakpoint down here, though. I'm going to take this breakpoint off. But all this stuff is the reason why you want to use NextJS. So here's this other blog. And I'm just going to do this a couple times here. Cow1. I don't want to bore you guys with the details here, but let's go ahead and... I'm just trying to do 5 blogs so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. All right, so then going back to the home page, you can see that the home page is rendering my blog in this sort of way. That's why I kind of structured it the way it did. So this is the home page and everything, all the same images, but you click on it. It's all flat file system. It's all server-side rendered via Next.js. It's not using React on the client side. In fact, this entire blog, this page right here is using the template engine I created for myself, which I don't recommend that you do because, again, this is just dealing with some basic stuff. I could actually keep this in place for just displaying the blog because it's very fast, but it's not going to be probably the direction that I go in the future. All right, and last thing I want to mention is simply I'm going to use this site because it's currently hosted on my Linode account. And if I were to put this in a Google PageSpeed tester and just analyze it, I want to show you that since it's mostly server-side generated content, you can see that Google ranks it a 99 on a scale of 1 to 100. And granted, there's not a lot of stuff going on with that alternative JS page. The fact of the matter is, though, it is a relatively large amount of data that's passed down. So if you looked at the page source, and then you look at the actual bundle file down at the bottom, and you look at how much information is in there, there's quite a bit of data that has to be passed down in order for that to be rendered. It's still ranked a rank of 99, which is really good. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm building a blog that is following these similar principles and only using the tools where they need to be used. And right now it's Fastify and Next.js and React, and it's the three of those together that I feel like give me the most flexibility and control over the direction of this blogging framework that I'm trying to build. So it's all about speed in mind, and it's really just my own personal project. I've only been working on it a couple of days, but this is the type of stuff I do every now and then just to try to keep things fresh. I feel like I want to build a blog framework from the ground up because I really it's an entire web framework. It's going to have a multi-purpose type of thing, and eventually I hope to have it appeal to more than just like a blogging type thing, but also like for my tutorials, for quizzes, for things like that. But me building it from the ground up, it makes me a better developer in my opinion because it's always fun building things yourself, but it also gives you a full understanding of everything involved. And even building something like a WordPress type website. It also gives you the ability to understand why Next.js is a really important thing. It's the best tool for not having to write your own goddamn template engine, right? I mean, that's the fact of the matter. And it allows you to write React, and it works seamlessly with pretty much any framework you want to use it with, if it's a Node-based framework. So this isn't really something you would use with Django. If you're using Django or some other like Ruby on Rails, you're not really going to use Next.js. But if you're using Node and you're using React, you absolutely should be using Next.js. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and have a good day. Bye.